I'll never forget my first real job interview coming out of high school at a local convenience store. I still remember walking up the steps to the manager's office. He had a big, giant window overlooking the entire store, sitting in the leather chair in front of his desk. And he welcomed me with, saying thanks for coming in, thanks for making time today, all that good stuff. Now, I will say that this interview in particular went pretty well overall. You get the usual, how are you qualified for this position? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? I think I did pretty well during all those things, felt confident. By the end of the interview, he even asked me, if I was ready to start next week, which basically meant I had the job already. However, there was one thing in particular that he said that didn't quite sit right with me. One of the questions he asked toward the end of the interview was what were my long-term goals, and having just started music production a couple months earlier, I said one of my big goals was to become a music producer and work with different artists from all over the world. However, instead of offering any type of encouraging words or saying, congrats, whatever, I pretty much got the very blunt and stern response of, that's not very realistic. The more you grow up, the more you're going to realize how dumb that idea actually is. He wasn't saying these things directly, but very indirectly saying, that's not realistic. That's not a real goal. That's bad. You know what I mean? So, that's basically the response that I got immediately from him. And that really just threw off the whole energy for me. I remember once I left the interview, I was thinking, even if I take this job, I'm going to have a sour taste in my mouth moving forward just from that, but I didn't let it get to me, personally. I understood that it wasn't an attack on me. It was more so a reflection of his insecurities and, his outlook on things that he had no experience in. I didn't know the man's past or what he had been through in his life, but I could only assume that, at one point someone told him something similar and he let it affect him and change his own path, and kind of just give up on his dreams and ambitions and things like that. And, again, I don't know if he enjoyed being a store manager. It didn't really seem like he did. So, who knows? That could be, a factor that played into it, but I just chose to, use that as fuel for myself, especially when I was first starting out. That was super important to, go through the trial of hearing someone say that and be able to keep going, and just keep, the energy good for myself. I'm able to look back on that, as somewhat of a good memory still. And again, it makes me remember all the time that the only true person that can stop you is you at the end of the day. And I also keep that in mind when I interact with people like that, because there's people like that everywhere. You're going to find more people like that than people that are probably going to encourage you, which is super unfortunate. But at the end of the day, they have their lives and you have yours. And so for me, I'm like, I have my own life. I have my own goals. No matter what he says or anyone else says, I can keep going, keep doing this thing, and turn it into something super awesome. It's also important to note that I did take the job. It was a seasonal position, but I ended up quitting about 4 or 5 months later. And I'm also still doing music to this day, 8 years later. So I think it's safe to say that I definitely put my energies into the right places.